Having replaced my Bedford CF with an Iveco 5510, I had solved my business transport issues. Well, sort of. The Iveco was perfectly capable, but with a 20-foot body and then another space behind the cab for the winch, said truck was a tad off being 30 foot long in total. This made for an interesting time in tight situations on housing estates or city streets when loading vehicles. That problem aside, I now needed to tackle my personal conveyance needs. My mother, having made some shrewd investments earlier the year before, was now reaping the rewards. This meaning that the old Ford Sierra Sapphire had been scrapped and replaced with a very smart 6-year-old BMW E36. Very nice. But no way was she going to allow her oil-soaked, psychotic driving son anywhere near the bloody car. I would have to make my own arrangements. Step forward, Big Pete. Now having risen from hired mechanic to running the local garage's car sales, he had taken a silver Vauxhall Cavalier SRi 130 saloon in as part exchange. This was the Mark II shape. Still bruised from the BMW E28 with chocolate mousse in the coolant fiasco, I probably should have taken my search elsewhere. The 130 is a pretty lively car, and despite its somewhat dull and scratch paintwork, I found myself handing over 375 quid to become its custodian. In contrast to all of the other vehicles Pete had fobbed off on me over the years, this car was brilliant. In 5 years of use, it broke down twice. Once when the earth braid from engine to body dropped off somewhere, meaning that I came out of the pub and it wouldn't start. My old mate Stewie had to come to my rescue. The other outside a girl's house one evening after midnight when the fuel pump wasn't getting any power. A quick hot wire from the pump to the rear tail light got me going again. Compared to a Bedford CF diesel, the Cavalier's acceleration was blisteringly addictive. My neighbour's mate Grant, who everyone knew as Granny Lamb Chop, needed a lift home after an evening in a shed dwelling. This was during my first few weeks of ownership, so I was still enjoying booting the Cavalier everywhere I went. Grant, after a few miles, turned to my neighbour, asking, "Does he always drive like this at night?" referring to us just passing through a sleepy village at over 80 miles an hour. "Of late," was all my neighbour offered from the Cavalier's rear seats whilst nonchalantly rolling a fag. Within a few months I had evicted those rear seats totally. I was delivering parts around the local garages daily, and sometimes had large items that just wouldn't fit in the bloody boot. Noddy, the tyre fitter, who was down the road from us, would buy used tyres from me at a fiver a pop for cash. With the seats out, I could happily stack 8 or so inside the car. One morning, the roofer, who had decided to retire, wanted me to buy his pile of scrap lead. I called at his ex-council house in the Vauxhall and agreed to buy the stash he had under a tarp in the front garden. Normally, I would have gone back to collect this lot with the truck. However, various likely-looking types were lurking about the estate, and I figured that leaving the lead exposed on his front garden for over an hour would just lead to a bout of scumbaggery. It was all rolled up, flashing, so I kept stacking it in the back and in the boot of the 130. She started to look a little bit sick by the time the thing was full and loaded, and a bit wallowy on the road into town. Big Bill at the scrapyard scratching his head as I unloaded what turned out to be 400 kilograms of lead onto his scales. Around the time of buying the Cavalier, a local girl started calling into the yard most days on her horse. She was very pretty, and we would chat whilst I stripped various wrecks for parts. Passing her driving test had me fitting tyres to her Mark IV Escort that her mum generously would loan her to potter around in. All this was quite encouraging, her even coming out to the pub with me several times, including to celebrate my 23rd birthday. The one fly in the ointment being her on-half boyfriend I dubbed Wingnut, due to his Martin Clune-sized ears. As her visits to the yard increased, so did the frequency of tales of woe regarding this lad's behaviour. It got to the point that I actually started to feel sorry for the poor sod. He couldn't seem to get anything right. His spending most evenings cruising around in his father's Mark II Cavalier CDI with a carload of local knobheads wasn't really doing him any favours with this girl. The evening she turned up at the pub, clad in the ubiquitous little black dress, totally pissed and teary, just about put the tin lid on it for me. Due to my digestive issues, I can't drink, so that night I was obviously sober. By the time last orders were called, she was in a pickle, and I decided to drop her back at her parents' on my way home, pouring her into the passenger seat of my SRi 130 in the autumnal night air of 1999. I was about to head home when Wingnut and his crew skidded up alongside, abuse was swapped, and they span off again. A few miles out of town, a car, its lights on full beam, loomed up behind us, then indicated and pulled round. As it came past, the passenger window opened, and someone spat a fountain of phlegm over my car's glass. Incensed by this, I shoved the Cavalier down 2 gears and set off in pursuit. Like a childish game of tag with a cassette player blasting out late 90s techno, he and I traded overtakes and ridiculous feats of driving stupidity along with the rural roads. It was what was well over midnight. My car had 12 horsepower more on paper, but with only the two of us in it versus the 5 in the other car, and us having no rear seats on board, mine was carrying far less weight. Yes, I was this stupid at 23. Daftly, there was no way I was going to let an 18-year-old in his father's car show me up. Giving it everything I had, coming around a blind B-road bend on the wrong side, I overtook their gold Vauxhall, my passenger now suddenly a lot more sober and with her feet up on the dashboard, screaming frantically and braced for an impact that happily never came. We sailed on past them and away into the night. I then drove sedately to her mother's house and dropped her off. I saw her a few times after that, but by then the spell seemed to be broken, as something about what happened that night changed things irrevocably. Hello there. Thank you for watching my video. If you enjoyed this one, and please like, share and subscribe. It is appreciated. It does mean a lot. All the best to you. See you next time. Take care.